Hello, everyone. My name is Keta Valme. I am currently a sophomore at Westfield State University studying English with a creative writing concentration. This project was for my Native American class that I took this fall of 2021. And during the course of the semester, we focused on learning a lot about Native Americans and their culture and their heritage and how their everyday lives are, their everyday battles. It was a really good class, and we read two books, one of them being They Are There by Tommy Orange and The Mirror Thieves, which were really interesting books, like different books. The Mirror Thieves was for like young adults, like it was made for young adults, whereas They're There by Tommy Orange was written for higher, like upper level, like readers. They're really good books. I am going to begin my presentation explaining what the difference between race and ethnicity is. The topic on race versus ethnicity is one that a lot of Americans seem to confuse, regardless of the fact that it is very clear. Not to worry though, I'm here to gladly break it down for the people who lack education between the two. Rather than being based on biology or scientific notions of ancestry, race is a social category that has been essentialized and biologized as a way to justify inequality and white dominance. Ethnicity, too, is a social construct that relies on claims of shared ancestry and cultural traditions. Race focuses on physical appearance of the skin and characteristics. Race is a social construct and it is related to commonalities between people. Ethnicity, on the other hand, zooms in on culture, traditions, and familial bonds. For example, one can be white and African. White is the race, whereas African is the ethnicity. Um, why did I choose to present this topic? I focused on presenting this topic today because there has been like a huge rise of DNA heritage testing from like 2018 up until today that resulted in a lot of white folks falsely claiming Native American heritage in order to benefit from the Native American culture. American politician, also known as a U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, was put on the spotlight during 2018 because she was identifying as a Native American. This brought the whole nation in a frenzy because she was doing this around election time, and Trump kept making fun of her Native American quote unquote heritage. She then admitted to falsely claiming American heritage and then proceeded to say that it really didn't benefit her from nothing, that it didn't help her get any more votes than she was going to get anyways. Another reason why I chose to focus on the issue of pretendians, quote unquote, is because Native American literature is very new to me. And during the semester, I was watching a Netflix show called Paradise PD. And in one of the episodes, one of the main characters named Dusty got his DNA test back. And the DNA test claimed that he was 164th Native American. I'm not even sure what that means. Neither did he, and neither do a lot of Americans, honestly. And regardless of that fact, for the rest of the show, he walked around claiming Native American heritage and dressing in Native American clothing. This caused the Native American characters in the show a lot of anger, and that really clicked in my brain. Like, this is a real life problem, and we barely talk about it, which is really damaging to like not only the Native American culture but every other culture around the world, because people go around claiming they're from different cultures just to benefit from it, which is never really a good look at the end of the day. So as you can see here, I have a bar graph because throughout my research on this project, something that I've never thought of before and needed to know was how much of the American population does Native Americans make. And according to the U.S. Census, which seemed to be the most accurate website to provide real easy To provide real easy to read, easy to understand data, the American Survey the American Survey is an ongoing survey that provides data every year. It gives communities the current information they need to plan investments and services. It covers a broad range of topics about social, economic, demographic, and housing characteristics in the U.S. population. Looking into the bar graph, it's showing the peak of Native American identities from 2010 to 2019. And according to the data, it skyrocketed from 2.9 million people in 2010. It skyrocketed from 2.9 million people in 2010 to 6.9 in 2019. I will let this graph sit for a little bit so y'all can get a chance to read it and understand it and look at the numbers, honestly, because it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy to understand. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Now, what exactly could have caused the rise in DNA testing that caused the claim of false Native American heritage? So, the the whole like DNA testing thing really did not hit the media surface until like the pandemic. We're dealing with TikTok, a rise of TikTok. I was on TikTok all pandemic, and a lot of TikTokers were talking about 23andMe and Ancestry.com. A lot of people were buying the test, regardless of how pricey it was, trying to find like their heritage, their backgrounds, and whatnot. COVID-19 played a huge role because if it wasn't for Miss Rona, we would have never been inside the house quarantining, and people would, find other ways to entertain themselves. But since we're in the pandemic, we're influenced. We let the media influence us a lot while we're in the house. People were doing DNA testing. People were doing race misconceptions. And people were on TikTok a whole lot. Is it only through DNA testing that white folks were claiming Native heritage? Absolutely not. People started using physical appearance to claim Native American heritage. They would look at their hair, straight dark hair, to determine Native heritage. They also looked at cheekbones. Like, this is a problem because when you're being asked what is your race, or what is your race, or what is your ethnicity, like, if you're not a certain race or a certain ethnicity, there's no reason for you to circle it on a piece of paper, or on a piece of important application, or on the U.S. Census as something you're not. And a lot of people were doing that, and the way they were determining like their Native American heritage was through like physical appearance. Come to find out that a huge significant amount like had zero Native blood, like, and these people also went and formed like social groups, like holding so much influence in the Native community, regardless of the fact that they weren't Native, which is a huge problem for the people who actually are, because not everything on socials is always like positive influences. People were using negative ways to influence the community. Now, how does this affect the Native American community? Like I was saying, people were using it to spread false practices, spread negative influences, negative practices. People were stealing from the actual community because they were selling fraud tribal ID cards representing native culture to non-native people. And these people then could just go around and say that they're part of a native tribe, that they're Native Americans, and these people weren't always doing good things, like bad look for the community. And they were selling counterfeit native art, like you're stealing from actual Native Americans, because now you're selling fake native art, which means that their art is not selling. You're selling fake native art for cheaper, which means that their art will never sell. They're benefiting from Native American government fundings like casino earnings and educational scholarships, which explains itself. Now that we know, like, the whole problem revolving around Native American, being a pretendian and falsely claiming to be Native American, this slide I wanted to give you guys, like, ways that we can prevent this from happening, because it happens a whole lot. We just do not hear about it. It just gets no social media coverage, just like nothing about Native Americans ever get any social media coverage. What can be done to prevent being a pretendian? You can start by educating yourself on Native American history before even thinking about claiming native blood. If you are someone who does have native blood, like, that is okay, but you also need to understand that you need to learn about the culture before just benefiting from it. And dig deeper into your ancestry. Like, it's always okay to be Native American. Like, the point of my project was not to like stop you from claiming to be Native American even though you are. It was more so to like tell you to dig deeper into your ancestry before you can just claim it like that, because a lot of people just claim it, they run with it, they benefit from it, they spread false influences and never really find a way to ever give back to the community, which is really damaging. And this is a list of my works cited page. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. Thank you for taking the time to view my project, and I really appreciate you guys coming along. Thank you.